The old man did not look ashamed when they called him a thief. That was what made the whole diner turn cruel. Harold Finch stood beneath the warm yellow lights of Magnolia Table with one hand wrapped around a white paper envelope and the other gripping the back of a chair like his knees were negotiating with gravity. He was 78 years old, narrow-shouldered, unshaven, wearing a faded work jacket that still smelled faintly of motor oil and rain. Across from him, Celeste Ward held her phone high enough for everyone to see that the red live stream dot was still glowing. "Sir," she said, her voice polished for an audience, "there was $5,000 in that envelope. You saw it fall, you picked it up, and now you're telling us you don't know where it came from." Harold's eyes moved once, not to Celeste, not to the camera, not to the dozen lunch guests already whispering behind their menus. He looked past them, toward the waitress standing near the coffee station, both hands wrapped around a damp rag, her face so pale it seemed the room had taken the blood from it. Then Harold tucked the envelope inside his jacket. "I found it," he said, "so I kept it." A woman near the window gasped like she had paid admission for the sound. One of Celeste's friends, a man in a navy blazer with a gold watch too large for his wrist, laughed without humor. "At least he's honest about being rotten." Harold did not answer. The waitress at the coffee station lowered her head. Celeste stepped closer. Her perfume reached him before she did, bright and expensive, like flowers arranged over a lie. "You understand this was a kindness test," Celeste said, loud enough for her phone to catch every syllable. "We wanted to show people that goodness still exists. We gave you a chance to do the right thing." Harold's mouth tightened. The corner of it twitched, not quite a smile, not quite pain. "Well," he said, "then I guess I failed." The diner erupted, not all at once. First came the murmurs, then the pointed looks, then the phones. People who had been eating pot roast and peach pie 10 minutes earlier lifted their cameras as if Harold had become a storm passing through town. "Look at him. Unbelievable. He doesn't even care. That's somebody's grandfather. No, that's somebody's warning." Celeste turned slightly so the live stream could frame them both. The beautifully dressed woman with the soft voice, the shabby old man holding stolen money. "Can you at least explain why?" she asked. Harold looked at her then. His eyes were gray, hard, tired. No, it was the worst possible answer. And somehow it was the only one he was willing to give. A busboy near the kitchen whispered, "Mr. Finch, don't." Harold heard him. His face changed for half a second, just enough for someone who knew grief to recognize it. Then he started toward the door. The young waitress behind the counter made a small sound, like a breath catching on a broken hinge. Celeste followed him with the camera. "So you're just leaving?" she said. "You're going to walk out with money that isn't yours." Harold stopped by the front door, where sunlight poured across the tile floor in a bright rectangle. Dust moved through it slowly, peaceful and indifferent. He reached for the handle. Before he opened it, he said, "Lady, you don't know what belongs to who." Then he walked out. By sunset, the clip had been viewed more than 2 million times. By midnight, strangers had given Harold Finch a new name, the Greedy Grandpa. And by morning, the one person he had tried to protect was standing outside his trailer, with tears frozen on her face, holding the very piece of truth Harold had left behind. Harold Finch lived at the edge of town in a silver trailer that had been old when his knees still worked right. The place sat behind a closed auto shop, with a hand-painted sign that read Finch and Daughter Repairs, though the daughter had not stepped inside for 12 years. And the word repairs had been faded nearly white by the sun. There were 3 things Harold still kept in good condition: his tool chest, his late wife's coffee mug, and a small wooden box in the back of his closet, filled with newspaper clippings he never read, but could not throw away. He returned to the trailer that afternoon with the envelope still inside his jacket and the whole town already boiling against him. His phone, an old flip model held together with black tape near the hinge, had 17 missed calls by the time he stepped inside. He did not check them. He set the envelope on the kitchen table, took off his jacket, and washed his hands in the sink until the water ran cold. The kitchen smelled of instant coffee and dust. A calendar from a feed store hung on the wall, still turned to March though it was late September. On the counter sat a jar of coins sorted by type, a habit from old poverty, and beside it a folded blue scarf with white daisies along the edge. That scarf did not belong to him. It belonged to his daughter, Annie, who had once worn it every Sunday when she was 16 and still believed her father could fix anything with a wrench and a promise. He had failed her. That was the plain version. The cruel version had been printed in the paper. Years ago, Annie had worked at a bank branch on Oak County Road. A drawer had come up short after a holiday rush. Nothing dramatic, nothing criminal at first. Just missing cash, a nervous supervisor, a security review, and a young woman who had already been fragile from bills, a sick mother, and a father too proud to say he did not know how to comfort her. The accusation spread before the truth did. Harold remembered walking into that bank in his mechanic's shirt, hands black with grease, asking to speak to the manager. He remembered the manager's clean desk, clean nails, clean voice. He remembered saying, "My girl didn't take your money," and he remembered losing his temper. Not violence, nothing like that. Worse in some ways, he had shouted, he had cursed. He had made himself look like exactly the kind of man they expected Annie's father to be. Poor, angry, defensive, guilty by relation. Someone recorded it. The clip traveled through town before supper. Annie was cleared 2 days later when the missing money was found inside a miscounted deposit bag. But people did not apologize with the same energy they accused. By then, Annie had stopped eating, stopped answering calls, stopped wearing the blue scarf. She eventually moved 3 states away and built a life Harold knew about only through Christmas cards that became shorter every year. The last one had said, "Hope you're well, Dad." Not love, not Annie. Just a polite signature, like a door closing quietly. Harold had learned one thing from that time, though he had learned it too late. When a crowd decides what it wants to see, innocence does not stand a chance unless someone steps between the crowd and the frightened person. At Magnolia Table, he had seen that same look on the young waitress. Her name was Lily Marin. 24, maybe 25, dark hair always pinned too tightly. A nervous way of smoothing her apron when customers raised their voices. She had been working at the diner for 4 months, long enough for Harold to know she gave extra creamers to old women and pretended not to notice when truck drivers left bad tips. She was not his family. She was not his problem. That was what Harold told himself when he sat in the corner booth every Thursday with black coffee and toast he did not always pay for on time. Lily never made a fuss. She would slide the check face down and say, "Whenever you're able, Mr. Finch." He hated that. Not because she was unkind, because she wasn't. Pity made him feel trapped inside his own skin. So he snapped at her. He complained about the toast. He told her the coffee tasted like brown water. He once said the diner would run better if everybody under 30 stopped apologizing and started paying attention. Lily had only smiled, thin and tired. "Probably true," she said. That was when he noticed the bruise-colored shadows beneath her eyes. On the day of Celeste Ward's kindness test, Harold had arrived just before noon. The diner was fuller than usual, too many polished shoes, too much perfume, too many people smiling without hunger. Celeste sat at the center table with 4 friends and 2 cameras disguised badly as casual phones. Harold recognized her from a flyer taped outside the community center. Celeste Ward speaks, building kindness in a divided world. He had seen enough of the world to distrust anyone who branded kindness before practicing it. Lily poured his coffee with trembling hands. "You all right?" Harold asked, harsher than he meant. She blinked. "Yes, sir. You're spilling, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be steady." Her mouth tightened. For a moment he thought she might cry. Then Celeste called out from the middle of the diner, "Miss, could we get more lemon water?" Lily turned too quickly. The coffee pot knocked against Harold's cup. A small splash hit his wrist. He hissed. Lily froze. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "For heaven's sake," Harold muttered, wiping his sleeve. Celeste's phone shifted toward them. Harold noticed. The camera had not been filming the lemon water. It had been waiting. Then the envelope appeared. It was not dramatic at first. A white paper envelope slid from Celeste's designer handbag onto the floor beside Lily's station. Thick enough to announce itself. Loose enough to seem accidental. Celeste looked away at precisely the wrong time. Both of her friends nudged the camera angle lower. Lily saw the envelope first. Harold saw Lily see it. The girl's hand moved before her mind did. She bent, picked it up, and for one terrible second, her thumb opened the flap. Harold saw the money. He also saw Lily's face, not greed, fear. That distinction mattered, though nobody with a camera ever waited long enough to learn it. Lily's hand shook. Inside the envelope was a stack of bills, wrapped with a paper band and a small card printed with Celeste Ward's name. The test was clear. Return the money, receive praise, hesitate, receive judgment. But Lily did more than hesitate. She looked toward the kitchen, where a young man in a dish apron stood with his back turned, coughing into his elbow. Then she glanced at the bulletin board near the register, where a handwritten donation jar sat beneath a photograph of a child in a hospital bed. Harold had seen that jar before. Lily's little brother, Noah. Medical bills, it said. No real hospital named, no details. Just a photo of a boy with a shaved patch near one temple and a grin too brave for his face. Harold knew desperation when it walked into a room. He had lived with it long enough to know its footstep. Lily closed the envelope. Then Celeste turned and said brightly, "Oh my goodness, did I drop something?" Every camera lifted. Every rich face leaned forward. Lily stood with the envelope in her hand and terror blooming across her features. That was when Harold moved. He did not think it through beautifully. He did not become noble in his mind. He only saw Annie at 23, standing in a bank lobby while people watched her breathe, like breathing itself was suspicious. He pushed himself up from the booth. "Mine," he said. Lily turned toward him. "What?" Harold held out his hand. "That envelope, I dropped it." The room paused. Celeste smiled, but the smile was uncertain now. This was not the performance she had planned. "Oh," she said. "Sir, I don't think. I said it's mine." Lily's hand hovered. Harold looked at her once, not gently, that would have broken her. He looked at her like a mechanic telling a young apprentice to hand over the wrong-sized wrench before somebody lost a finger. She gave him the envelope. That was the moment the story began to go wrong for everyone except the person Harold intended to save. Celeste rose from her chair. "Actually," she said, "that envelope came from my bag." Harold slid it into his jacket. "Then you ought to take better care of your bag." A few people chuckled, thinking he was joking. He was not. Celeste's eyes sharpened. Her brand had been built on soft confrontation, gentle tears, generous reveals. She had expected Lily to return the envelope and become the grateful centerpiece of a viral clip. Or perhaps, if Lily failed, Celeste would guide her toward redemption. Either way, Celeste would stand at the center, merciful and glowing. Harold had stepped into the frame like a brick through a stained glass window. "Sir," Celeste said, now performing patience, "I need you to give that back." "No." That was all. No explanation, no fear, no moral lesson, just no. By then, other diners had understood something was happening. Phones came up. Chairs scraped. The kitchen door opened. Lily stood behind Harold, invisible to most of them, her fingers pressed to her mouth. "Why would you do that?" Celeste asked. Harold glanced toward the camera, and he understood with a coldness that settled behind his ribs. If he told the truth, Lily would become the story. The internet would not say a frightened waitress hesitated while caring for a sick brother. It would say a waitress almost stole money from a generous woman. They would freeze her face, circle her hand, dig through her life, find the donation jar, call her brother a prop, call poverty an excuse, decide her entire worth from one terrified second. Harold knew because it had happened to Annie with less technology and fewer strangers. So he gave Celeste the villain she needed himself. By the next afternoon, Harold's face was everywhere a person could look without meaning to. A teenager at the gas station held up a phone and whispered, "That's him." A cashier refused to meet his eyes. Someone had taped a printed screenshot to the door of Finch and Daughter Repairs. In thick red marker, they had written, "Shame." Harold looked at it for a long time, then took it down carefully so the tape would not peel the paint. Inside the old shop, dust covered the hood of a half-finished pickup. A calendar from 12 years earlier still hung near the office. Annie's handwriting remained on the parts shelf, labeling bins in neat blue ink, spark plugs, belts, filters, things with names and purposes. People were harder. Harold turned on the small television near the workbench. Not because he wanted to see the news, but because silence had become too loud. Celeste was on a morning lifestyle show, seated on a cream-colored couch under studio lights. She wore pale blue and looked wounded in a tasteful way. "I never wanted to shame anyone," she said. "The point was to celebrate honesty. But what happened in that diner reminded us that kindness can't just be a word. Character is revealed when no one thinks there are consequences." Harold snorted. "No consequences." That was a rich person's phrase. The host leaned forward. "Did you speak to the man afterward?" Celeste lowered her eyes. "We tried." He walked away. On the screen, they replayed the clip. Only the part where Harold said, "I found it, so I kept it." Not Lily's hand. Not Harold stepping in. Not the moment before. The edited video made everything look simple. Simple stories were easier to hate. That evening, Lily came to Harold's trailer. He saw her through the thin curtain before she knocked. She stood in the yard wearing a gray hoodie, arms wrapped around herself though the air was warm. Her car idled behind her, one headlight dimmer than the other. Harold opened the door before her knuckles touched it. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Her eyes were red. "You shouldn't have done that." "Probably, Mr. Finch, go home." She stepped closer. "They're calling you horrible things. I've been called worse by better mechanics. This isn't funny." "No." Her chin trembled. "Why did you say it was yours?" Harold looked past her toward the closed shop. A moth struck the porch light again and again, determined to mistake brightness for a way out. "You know why," he said. Lily covered her face. "I didn't take it," she whispered. "I know. I looked inside, that's all. I just looked. I know. My brother's bill came yesterday, and I saw all that money. And for 1 second I thought, I know." She dropped her hands. "You don't know. You don't know what that second felt like." Harold's voice softened so slightly most people would have missed it. "Yes, I do." Lily stared at him. Harold reached into his pocket and pulled out the white envelope. It was thinner now. Lily recoiled. "I don't want it." "Good. It ain't for you." He handed her a folded receipt instead. She took it with both hands. It was from a payment office 3 towns over. A partial payment had been made toward an account under Noah Marin's name. Not $5,000. Not even close. Just $843, paid in cash. Lily looked up, confused. "That was from the envelope?" "No." "Then where?" "Sold an old transmission. You needed that. I need coffee that doesn't taste like mop water. Life disappoints us." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but less she loved once, broken and unwilling. Harold pointed toward her car. "You go back to work tomorrow. You say nothing. I can tell them." "No, I can tell them you were protecting me. And then they'll ask what I was protecting you from." She swallowed. He let the silence do the explaining. From somewhere far away, a dog barked twice. Lily looked down at the receipt again. "This isn't fair." Harold's mouth pulled into something almost kind. "Fair is a tool people talk about when they don't intend to fix anything." She stayed there a moment longer. Then she whispered, "My brother's not a scam. I didn't say he was. People online would." Yes, that was the truth sitting between them. Not just the money, not just Celeste, not just the diner. The truth was that a crowd did not need facts to make a meal out of someone. Before Lily left, she said, "You remind me of my dad." Harold looked away. "Sorry," she added quickly. "Don't be. He dead?" "No, just gone." Harold nodded slowly. "Sometimes that's messier." Lily drove away. Harold stood on the porch until her taillights disappeared. The next morning, Celeste returned to Magnolia Table with 2 assistants and a plan. The diner owner, Marjorie Bell, did not want them there. Marjorie was 62, widowed, and had run the place long enough to know that morality performed at lunchtime rarely tipped well. But Celeste had influence. Her followers had begun leaving 1-star reviews, not because of the food, but because the diner allowed theft. Others praised Celeste for exposing decay in small-town values. A few demanded Lily be interviewed. That was the word they used, interviewed. As if a waitress making $12 an hour owed the world a statement. Celeste sat at the same center table. This time there was no envelope. Only a laptop, 2 phones, and the cold focus of someone repairing damage to her image. "I want to make this right," she told Marjorie. Marjorie crossed her arms. Then, "Stop posting." Celeste blinked as if the idea had arrived in a language she did not speak. "People are invested now," she said. "If we don't guide the conversation, it becomes uglier." It became ugly Because you fed it. Celeste's jaw tightened. Lily stood near the counter, pretending to polish clean mugs. Celeste saw her. Lily, isn't it? Lily froze. Marjorie stepped between them. She's working. I only want to ask what she saw. Lily slipped. A mug struck the counter, cracked at the handle, and rolled toward the edge. Harold would have caught it. Nobody else did. It hit the floor and shattered. Every head turned. Celeste's assistant lifted a phone. Marjorie snapped, "Put that down." But it was too late for Lily. Fear had taken her face again. Across town, Harold sat in his shop, watching the live stream someone had sent him by text. He saw Lily's hands. He saw the phone rise. He saw Celeste's expression, all concern and calculation. And he knew the machine was turning back toward the person he had tried to shield. His own humiliation had not been enough. So Harold did something that made the town hate him even more. He went back. Magnolia Table was bright with afternoon sun when Harold walked in. The bell above the door rang, and the room fell into a silence so complete, even the friar seemed to quiet. Celeste looked up. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Harold wore the same jacket, same boots, same expression that made people think they knew his soul. Someone whispered, "You've got nerve." Harold took off his cap. "I came for pie," he said. The room recoiled at the sheer ugliness of his calm. Marjorie closed her eyes. "Harold," Celeste stood. "Actually, I'm glad you're here. I doubt that. Would you like to return the money now?" "No." A man at the counter slammed his palm down. "You proud of yourself?" Harold looked at him. "Not especially." "Then give it back." "Can't." Celeste seized on the word. "Can't?" Harold moved toward the counter, each step slow. He placed his cap beside a napkin holder and sat on the stool farthest from Lily. "I spent it," he said. The sound that went through the diner was not a gasp. It was worse. Satisfaction. People liked him better when he made their hatred easy. Celeste's face went still. "You spent $5,000 that wasn't yours?" "Not all of it." Lily turned sharply. Harold did not look at her. Celeste's assistant whispered, "We're live." Harold picked up a menu. "Apple pie still any good?" A woman near the window said monster. Harold's fingers tightened around the menu, but only Lily saw it. Celeste stepped closer. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked. "Do you understand that people trusted you to make one decent choice?" Harold looked down at the menu, as if the answer might be printed between meatloaf and chicken dumplings. Then he said, "People trust too easy when there's a camera pointed the right way." Celeste flushed. "You don't get to lecture me about cameras." "No," Harold said. "I expect not." It might have ended there if Celeste had been satisfied. But public righteousness is hungry. She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was a grid of comments moving too fast to read. "Thief, scum, lock him up, find his family, make him pay." "We raised money," Celeste said. Harold did not move. "For the diner. For ethical training. For a local honesty initiative." Marjorie gave a short, bitter laugh. "You raised money off my diner without asking me?" Celeste ignored her. "We also raised replacement funds," she continued. People wanted to prove that generosity is stronger than greed. Harold finally looked at the screen. His face changed, not much, but enough, because one comment was pinned near the top. "Does anyone know the waitress?" She looked nervous too. Then another. "Watch the beginning." Girl had the envelope first, then another. Maybe Grandpa wasn't the only one. Lily read them from across the room. Her lips parted. Celeste saw it too. For the first time, uncertainty touched her performance. The story was shifting. Not toward truth. Toward a second victim. Harold stood. "Leave the girl out of it," he said. The room went quiet again. Celeste's eyes flicked to Lily. "What girl?" Harold cursed under his breath. He had said too much. Celeste turned slowly toward the coffee station. Lily stepped back. The cameras followed. And Harold Finch, who had already spent one day as the most hated man in town, realized he would have to become worse. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope, and threw it onto the floor. Bills spilled across the tile, not $5,000, a few 20s, someone's. A stack of cut newspaper shaped to look like money from a distance. Celeste stared. Harold said, "There, that's what's left." The room erupted again, louder than before. People thought he had mocked them. Celeste thought he had destroyed her test. Lily understood something else. Harold had kept the real money from ever being counted publicly. had stripped the envelope, replaced its bulk, and made himself look not only greedy, but petty and deceitful. He had made the evidence ugly enough that nobody would keep looking behind him. A man shoved Harold's shoulder. Harold stumbled against the counter. Lily cried out, "Stop!" The camera caught that. Celeste turned. Harold saw the trap closing around Lily's face, so he laughed. A hard, bitter laugh that made everyone look back at him. "You people wanted a show," he said. "Don't get shy now." Then he picked up his cap and walked out for the second time. This time, someone threw a packet of sugar after him. It struck the back of his jacket and burst open like a small white wound. The truth did not break open because one brave person decided to tell it. That would have been cleaner. It began because Marjorie Bell did not trust polished stories. After the second incident, after Celeste left with her assistants, and Lily disappeared into the back room, shaking too hard to hold a glass, Marjorie locked the diner door early. Then she went into the office and opened the security system. Magnolia Table had 4 cameras. One over the register, one near the kitchen, one facing the dining room, one above the front door that mostly captured hats, bald spots, and people lying about whether they had paid. The dining room camera had caught Celeste's table from behind. Not perfect, but honest. Marjorie watched the footage once, then again, then a third time with her hand pressed over her mouth. The official clip began when Harold said he kept the envelope. The security footage began earlier. It showed Celeste placing her handbag on the chair beside her. It showed her fingers slipping the envelope halfway out. It showed her assistant noticing. It showed the assistant's phone already angled toward Lily's station before anything had fallen. Then it showed the envelope drop. It showed Lily picking it up. It showed Lily opening it. It showed Lily's face. Marjorie almost stopped there, because she knew what the world would do with that face. But then Harold entered the frame. Not rushing, not dramatic. Just an old man who saw something coming and put himself in front of it. He claimed the envelope. Lily handed it over. Celeste challenged him. And when Celeste shifted right, trying to get Lily into the shot, Harold shifted too, blocking her. Again and again. A shabby old shield nobody had recognized because everybody had been too busy laughing at the dents. Marjorie sat in the office until the dinner lights outside turned blue. She did not post the footage, not yet. Instead, she drove to Harold's trailer. He was sitting outside in a folding chair, one boot resting on an overturned paint bucket. A small bag of frozen peas lay across his shoulder where the man in the diner had shoved him. Marjorie got out of her car. "You look terrible," she said. "You always know how to sweet-talk a man." She stood in front of him. "You should have told me." "No, I could have helped." "No, Harold." He removed the frozen peas and set them on the porch. "That girl gets 1 second of being scared on camera, and people will carve her up forever. You know it. I know it. Celeste probably knows it too, somewhere under all that lipstick and lighting." Marjorie looked away. "She has a sick brother," Harold said. "I know. You post that footage, they'll say she wanted the money. She did want it." Harold's eyes sharpened. Marjorie held up a hand. "Not like that. I mean, she's human. Wanting help isn't a crime. No. But the internet likes crimes better than humans." Marjorie sat on the porch step. For a while, neither spoke. The evening insects began their thin music in the grass. Finally, Marjorie said, "So what now?" "You let them ruin you." Harold stared toward the old shop sign. "Finch and Daughter Repairs." "Ruins an old address for me. That's not an answer. It's the only one I got." Marjorie looked at him carefully. "This is about Annie, isn't it?" Harold's jaw worked once. Marjorie had known his wife. She had known Annie as a little girl who sat at the diner counter drawing horses on napkins while Harold fixed Marjorie's old delivery van out back. After Annie left town, people learned not to say her name around him. Harold reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. It was the payment receipt for Noah Marin's account, the carbon copy he had kept. "I couldn't stop it then," he said. Marjorie's voice lowered. "You were scared. I was loud. There's a difference. You were her father. I was a hammer trying to fix glass." That line stayed with Marjorie. The next day, Celeste announced a live town forum at Magnolia Table. She framed it as healing. That was the word on the flyer. A conversation about honesty, compassion, and community standards. Marjorie nearly ripped the flyer in half when she saw it taped to her own door. But Celeste had rented the back room through Marjorie's nephew, who sometimes handled event bookings and had the judgment of a wet match. By the time Marjorie objected, 40 people had already signed up, and hundreds more planned to watch online. Harold did not intend to go. Lily begged him not to. "They'll destroy you," she said over the phone. "They're already bored with that." "No, they're not. They want you in the room. Then they'll be disappointed." But that evening, Harold found something tucked into the mail slot of his trailer. A card, no return address. Inside was a photograph printed from the viral video. Harold standing in the diner, Celeste holding the phone. Lily in the background, blurred and crying. Underneath, someone had written, "We see her too." Harold stared at those 4 words for a long time. Then he put on his cleanest shirt. The forum began at 7. By 7:10, Magnolia Table was packed beyond fire safety and good sense. Celeste stood near the front beside a small microphone and a ring light. She wore cream white, a color that made apology look expensive. Her husband sat in the front row, uncomfortable, checking his watch. Her friends occupied one table like a jury that had already voted. Lily was not supposed to be there. She stood in the kitchen, hidden behind the swinging door, because fear and guilt had both asked her to stay close. Marjorie stood behind the counter with her arms crossed. Harold entered at 7:15. The room turned. No one had to announce him. Hatred recognizes its appointment. Celeste inhaled. "Mr. Finch," she said. "Thank you for coming. I didn't come for you." He walked to the center aisle and remained standing. No chair, no comfort. Celeste began carefully. "Over the past 48 hours, many people have felt hurt, disappointed, and confused by what happened here. I want to start by saying that my intention was never humiliation." Harold looked around the room. Several phones were already up. Celeste continued, "But we cannot ignore wrongdoing simply because someone is elderly, lonely, or poor." The word poor landed harder than she expected. Even some of her supporters shifted. Harold said nothing. Celeste turned toward him. "Do you have anything you'd like to say?" The old Harold, the real Harold, the difficult Harold, might have told her where to put her microphone. Instead, he looked toward the kitchen door. He could see the edge of Lily's sleeve through the gap. Then he said yes. The room leaned in. Celeste looked relieved. Perhaps she imagined confession, contrition, a redemptive arc she could clip into tomorrow's post. Harold said, "I'm not a good man." The room stilled. "I don't say that so you'll argue. I'm rude. I'm proud. I've hurt people who loved me because I didn't know how to speak gentle when gentle was needed. I've mistaken silence for strength and anger for protection." Celeste's expression faltered. This was not the confession she had expected. Harold looked at the diners, one by one. But there are things a man can still refuse to do. Even a bad-tempered old fool can refuse to hand a frightened girl to a crowd. Celeste's face went pale. The phones shifted. Marjorie stepped away from the counter. Harold continued, "You came in here with money and cameras and called it kindness. But kindness doesn't set traps for people who are tired. Kindness doesn't hide behind a live stream waiting for somebody poor to prove they deserve mercy." Celeste interrupted. "That's not what happened." Harold looked at her. "Then play the whole video." "I did." "No. You played the part where I looked worst. I'm asking for the part before." Celeste's assistant whispered something. Celeste's composure tightened. "The full file is being reviewed." Marjorie laughed once from the counter. "Reviewed by who? Your lighting guy?" People turned. Celeste's eyes flashed. "Marjorie, I am trying to protect everyone involved." "No," Marjorie said. "You're trying to protect the version where you're the hero." The room shifted again. A first crack. Celeste lifted her chin. "If you have something to say it." Marjorie looked at Harold. He gave a small shake of his head. "No, do not expose Lily." Marjorie understood. So she did not play the whole security video. She played only the first 10 seconds that mattered. On the diner's small wall television, the footage appeared grainy and silent. Celeste's table, the handbag, the envelope being deliberately eased out, the assistant's phone already rising. Then Marjorie stopped the video. The room went dead quiet. Celeste said, "That proves nothing." Of course we had cameras. It was a kindness campaign. Harold replied, funny thing about campaigns. You always know who the enemy is before the battle starts. The second proof came from someone Celeste had forgotten. The busboy. His name was Owen, 19. Thin, quiet, invisible in the way working people become invisible when wealth fills a room. He stepped from the back hallway holding his own phone. I wasn't filming for them, he said, voice shaking. I was filming because my mom likes Celeste's videos, and I thought maybe I'd get her saying hello. Celeste turned toward him slowly. Owen, she said, warning wrapped in sweetness. He swallowed. Then he looked at Harold. The old man's face softened in the smallest possible way. Owen tapped his screen. His video was sideways, blurry, and human. It began near the pie case. It caught Celeste's assistant whispering before the envelope dropped. She's the soft one, the assistant said. Another voice, Celeste answered softly. Then she'll be perfect. The room changed temperature. Celeste went still. Her husband lowered his head. The video continued just long enough to catch Lily picking up the envelope, and Harold rising from his booth immediately. Not after temptation, not after calculation, but before Celeste had even turned around. Marjorie stopped it before Lily's face filled the screen. Harold's shoulders lowered a fraction. Denial came next, because denial always comes dressed better than truth. Celeste gripped the microphone. That was taken out of context. A man in the back said, so was Harold. No one laughed. Celeste's eyes shone now, but whether from anger or shame, no one could tell. You don't understand what it takes to build something positive, she said. People are cynical. They need proof that goodness still exists. Harold's voice was quiet. No. You needed proof you could recognize it. That was when Lily stepped out of the kitchen. Harold turned sharply. No. But she came anyway. Her apron was folded over one arm. Her face was blotched from crying, but her voice when it came did not break. I touched the envelope, she said. Harold closed his eyes. The room held its breath. Lily continued. I opened it. I saw the money. I thought about my brother's bills. I thought about what it would feel like to breathe for 1 month without choosing between gas and medicine. Celeste looked at her with something like horror now. Because Lily was no longer a prop. She was a person, and people are much harder to edit. I didn't take it, Lily said. But for 1 second I wanted to. Mr. Finch saw that. And he knew you saw it too. She turned toward Harold. He took the envelope because he knew what everyone would call me. He knew they'd say I was greedy, or trash, or using my sick brother. He knew because it had happened before to someone he loved. Harold's face changed. That was the emotional confirmation. Not the videos, not the receipt, the wound. Lily took a folded blue scarf from her pocket. Harold stared at it like the dead had spoken. I found this in your shop, she said softly. I went there to return the receipt you gave me, and the door was open. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked. But I saw the newspaper clippings. The room did not understand yet. Marjorie did. Harold whispered. Don't? Lily's eyes filled. You kept your daughter's story because nobody else kept the truth. Harold looked down. Celeste's phone lowered. For the first time since the story began, no one seemed eager to film. But the final truth did not come from Lily. It came from Celeste herself. Her assistant, pale and panicked, had been trying to delete something on the laptop. Celeste saw him. So did her husband. What are you doing? Her husband asked. Nothing, the assistant said. Marjorie reached over and closed the laptop halfway with one firm hand. Don't. Celeste looked between them, and something collapsed in her expression. Not because she had suddenly become noble, because she understood that the unedited file still existed, and the room had become too honest for her to control. Her husband stood. Celeste, play it. She shook her head. Play it, he repeated, quieter now, or I will. That was the irreversible moment. The unedited file appeared on the wall television. This time the room saw everything. Celeste discussing where Lily stood, the envelope drop, Lily's hesitation. Harold's eyes following the cameras, not the cash. Harold stepping between Lily and Celeste's phone. Celeste trying to angle around him. Harold shifting again. The entire diner saw the thing they had missed because Harold had made himself so easy to despise. He had not stolen the center of the story. He had absorbed the blow. When the video ended, no one spoke. Not because they were satisfied. Because shame is a heavy sound before it becomes words. Celeste lowered the microphone. Harold picked up his cap from the nearest table. Lily reached for him, but he shook his head. "Don't make me clean," he said softly. "What?" He looked at her then. "Let me stay complicated. It's closer to true." Then Harold Finch walked out of Magnolia Table for the third time. Nobody stopped him. Consequences came, but not in the way people online demanded. Celeste Ward did not lose everything overnight. Life rarely punishes neatly enough to satisfy strangers. Her sponsors paused their contracts. Her followers argued. Some defended her, some abandoned her. Some claimed the whole thing had been staged twice, because certain people would rather invent a second lie than admit they helped spread the first. But the town changed. That mattered more. Magnolia Table took down every flyer Celeste had left behind. Marjorie placed a small card near the register that read, "No filming staff without permission. No public tests, no staged charity. If you want to be kind, start by being quiet." People took pictures of the sign, of course. Marjorie hated that. Lily returned to work 3 days later. The first customer who tried to ask about the video was told by Marjorie that curiosity cost $40 an hour and came with dishwashing duties. The customer ordered meatloaf instead. A fund for Noah Marin appeared online. But this time, Marjorie managed it through the diner, with Lily's permission and without her brother's face plastered across every post. Donations came in slowly, then steadily. Not from outrage. From people who had watched themselves become part of something ugly and wanted imperfectly to step away from it. Harold did not accept apologies at first. There were too many. They came in envelopes, voicemails, awkward stops outside his shop. A woman from the diner brought peach cobbler and cried on his porch until he said, "Lady, either leave the cobbler or the crying, but don't make me handle both." She laughed through her tears and left the cobbler. The man who shoved him came by with his teenage son and offered to repair the broken fence behind the trailer. Harold said, "You know anything about fences?" The man said no. "Then this ought to be educational." They worked together in silence for 2 hours. Celeste came last. She arrived without cameras. That was the only reason Harold did not close the door. She stood outside the shop beneath the faded sign, wearing jeans and a plain sweater, looking smaller than she had under ring lights. "I owe you an apology," she said. "You owe that girl one first." I gave her one. "Then give her another later." First ones are usually for the person saying them. Celeste absorbed that. "I thought I was helping people," she said. Harold wiped grease from his hands with an old rag. "You were helping people feel something. Is that always wrong?" "No." He looked at her. "But feeling kind and being kind ain't twins. More like distant cousins who don't visit much." Celeste's eyes filled. "I humiliated you. You tried." "No, I did." Harold said nothing. She looked toward the old sign. "Finch and daughter?" His face closed. "She doesn't talk to me," he said. "Because of what happened. Because I happened wrong after it." Celeste nodded slowly. "I can take down every video," she said. "I can post the full apology. I can explain." "You can. Would that help?" Harold looked through the shop window at Annie's old handwriting on the parts bins. "No," he said, "but it might stop you from doing it to somebody else." Celeste left quietly. That evening, Harold found a new message on his flip phone. Unknown number. For a moment, he thought it was another stranger. Then he opened it. "Dad, it's Annie. Marjorie sent me the video, all of it. I don't know what to say yet. But I watched you step in front of that girl. I wish someone had done that for me, without making it worse. Maybe you wished that too. I'm not ready for a visit, but I'm ready for coffee sometime. No cameras." Harold sat down on the shop stool. The message blurred. He wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand and became angry at the dust for getting into them. The next Thursday, he went to Magnolia Table. No crowd, no live stream, no test. Just late morning sun, regulars speaking in low voices, silverware touching plates, coffee burning gently in the pot. Lily came to his booth. "You want the usual?" she asked. "Depends." "You learned to make coffee yet?" She smiled. "A real one this time." "No." "Then yes." She poured. Her hand did not shake. Harold noticed but did not mention it. A few minutes later, the bell over the door rang. A woman in her 40s stepped inside wearing a blue scarf with white daisies along the edge. Harold did not stand right away. His body forgot how. Annie looked older than the photograph in his wallet, and younger than the guilt in his memory. She stood by the door with both hands around her purse strap. Lily saw her, then looked at Harold. For once, she said nothing. Annie walked to the booth. "Hi, Dad." Harold opened his mouth. The old habits came first, a joke, a complaint, a shield. He forced them down. "Hi, Annie." She sat across from him. Neither reached for the other. Not yet. The waitress brought another cup without being asked. Outside, cars passed. Inside, the diner breathed around them. After a long silence, Annie looked at him and said, "You look awful." Harold nodded. "You too." Annie stared at him. Then she laughed. It was not forgiveness, not fully. Not the kind stories sometimes hand out like prizes at the end. But it was a sound from before the worst day. And Harold Finch, who had let the world call him greedy, so a frightened young woman could remain whole, wrapped both hands around his coffee cup and let that small sound be enough. Later, when people asked what really happened in Magnolia Table, Marjorie would tell them the plain version. An old man failed a kindness test. Then the test failed everyone else. But Lily remembered a different image. Not the money, not the cameras, not Celeste crying under the weight of her own reflection. She remembered Harold standing in a rectangle of sunlight by the diner door. Sugar burst across the back of his jacket, looking smaller than the hatred aimed at him, and still somehow strong enough to carry it. A man can be rough and still be tender where it counts. A man can fail in public and still be protecting someone in private. And sometimes, the person everyone points at is not the villain. Sometimes he is the wall. Some stories ask us to look twice. At the person who seems rude. At the person who seems guilty. At the moment that looks simple, because someone edited out the pain before it. Harold Finch was not perfect. That is what made his choice matter. He was proud, difficult, wounded, and often unkind with his words. But when the cruel machinery of public judgment turned towards someone weaker, he stepped into its path. Maybe that is the quiet lesson here. Kindness is not always soft, and dignity is not always easy to recognize. Sometimes real compassion does not ask to be seen. Sometimes it even lets itself be misunderstood. So here is the question worth sitting with. Have you ever judged someone too quickly, only to learn later there was more to the story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about hidden truth, dignity, sacrifice, and second chances matter to you, subscribe to The Last Truth Stories for more original fictional stories like this one.